Welcome to this
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
episode of the Maz's Musings podcast. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Disney World, and we'll be talking with Dan, who's been on the podcast before, to talk about various Disney trips and Disney-related trips that he's been on, and he's going to talk about his solo trip to Walt Disney World. And it came with some surprises, some twists and turns, and some learning experiences. So we're going to go through all of that. There were certainly some adventures, some misadventures, and all of it makes for a really, really fun episode. So I want to thank Dan for joining me. I want to thank you for listening. And, you know, the one great thing is that Dan has been able to look back on all of this and laugh. And laughter, so important to everything we do. So, of course, we start every episode with a little bit of laughter. So here's Meghan with her Cuckoo Bananas Joke of the Week.
And now it's time for Meghan's
Cuckoo Bananas Joke.
Hi, Meghan.
Hi.
What's so funny? Is your joke that funny?
What just happened?
I don't know. Things are popping up on the computer. This is already turning really weird. Okay, so do you have a joke for us today?
Yes.
Okay, are you going to be able to get through your joke today?
I don't know.
All right, we'll give it a try, okay? How about we... All right, we'll give it a try. Go ahead. What's your joke this week?
What's... Okay, I tried.
Deep breath.
Please hold this.
Deep breaths. All right. Deep breaths, and now we're ready.
What do you call bears with no ears?
I don't know. What do you call bears with no ears?
Bee.
What? That's a good one. Oh boy. All right, say goodnight.
Tick tock. Good night. Tick tock. Cuckoo clock. Tick tock. Cuckoo clock.
All right. Well, we said that we would be bringing the laughter. I bet you didn't expect that laughter was going to be coming directly from Meghan. Man, sometimes you can just really tell when she's a little overtired or a lot overtired. Well, now we'll just get right into our main topic. Obviously, no Mazza's Mickey Minute this week because our main topic is Disney related. So we'll get right into it. And here we go.
Donald, wake up! It's showtime! Don't forget the orchestra!
Ah, there you are. And just in time.
Mom says there's even more magical stuff now.
For those of you standing, please hold on to the handrails throughout our journey and stay clear of the doors.
Hang on to them hats and glasses, cause this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness. And here we go!
All right. Well, I am joined today by Dan Quiterio, who has been on the podcast before talking about various travels that he's been on, Disney related, and he's back again to talk about another trip that he took recently that was in some ways a little unorthodox and had some new experiences, some new to you experiences for sure. And so I'm interested to see how, I've followed some of this on social media, kind of live vicariously through your posts and your some of your humorous updates about stuff. But I'm looking forward to hearing about this more in depth. But before we get into that, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of either introduce yourself to any new listeners we have or reintroduce yourself to the existing audience.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks for having me again. I always love being here. I like you, and like I'm sure a lot of people listening, am a Disney adult kind of through and through. But sort of my pseudo Disney blind spot is, strangely enough, is the parks. Like I'm excited to talk with you about this because you go to the parks at least annually or so. And this is only my fourth ever trip to Walt Disney World. I've been to Disneyland 3 times. I've been on a couple of cruises. I like to try to vary up my experiences. So the things that we're going to talk about, like you said, it's this is not brand new experience. It's stuff that people experience all the time. Things like ride queues and the dining plan and resort stays and things like transportation, stuff like that is just commonplace everyday stuff for most people, but for a noob like me who doesn't know what the heck he's doing, there were a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong. So it was just like me, a lot of baptism by fire and figuring out how to roll with the punches.
And this was a solo trip for you too, so
it
it wasn't even anybody to kind of bounce an idea off of, so to speak,
or blame.
or blame. Yes. All right. So before we get into the trip, I did want to make mention you are one who does tend to when you have a thought or a comment on a past episode. You're more than willing to share it, and a lot of times when I remember to do so, I will shout out people who do make comments or give feedback on the podcast. So our last episode, for those who didn't hear it, we talked about our favorite sports movies. I had my friend, and he's a movie critic / entertainment writer, Matt Conway, was on to talk about our favorite sports movies, not necessarily what would be objectively the best, but the ones that we go to time and again. And so I just wanted to run through a couple of your comments. You had a series of 3, and the first one was that Raging Bull is one of your top 5 favorite movies. Now, this is you didn't qualify sports movies, your favorite movies
of all time. Yeah. And as we were texting about this earlier today, Chris, I asked you not to ask me any specific questions because I've only seen it, even though it had a big impact on me, I've only technically seen it once. And I really am overdue for another viewing. It's been a while, so I don't remember a lot of the details. But I remember watching it and thinking this is just pure art. And I think most people who see it would agree. It's one of Scorsese's best films. And it should belong on anyone's top 5 list, in my opinion, for sports movies for sure, if not all-time movies.
Fair enough. And I will readily admit that's one that, like you, I haven't seen recently at all. So that's probably why it didn't come up more front of mind for me, because it's an excellent movie. You also had listed Rocky, which was one of mine as well, and The Sandlot. And what about The Sandlot sticks out to you?
It's when you're watching it at a certain age, and I think you and I are around the right age to have seen that movie when it came out. I didn't see it in theaters, but kind of grew up watching it a bunch of times. And you're around the same age, maybe slightly older than the kids in the story. And I'm not a sports person in general, but I love people who are really passionate about things. And these are kids just being kids and being passionate about the sport that they love. I'm a theater person, so I love going to the theater. And my favorite plays are usually the ones that were made on like $5, made by people who are, we need to pay our actors and everyone else, of course, that's important. But like the people who are doing it art for art's sake, that's kind of what that movie reminds me of. People who are just really diving in and being kids. And it's just a lot of fun. It's super funny. And then seeing kind of where those characters end up when they get older and how their passions kind of drove or influenced their lives into adulthood was just a lot of fun to watch.
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned theater, because one of the other things you mentioned was that Bull Durham. There's
Oh
a
yeah.
play that's in New Jersey right now. Now theater, outside of the occasional thing, I'm not all that familiar with. I don't keep up with it certainly the way that you do as a theater enthusiast and someone who's seen thousands. Would you say
Uh,
at this point?
Almost. I'm actually quickly approaching my 1,000th play, and most of that is from within the last 10 to 15 years. So yeah, I definitely see a lot. And Bull Durham, I've actually never seen the movie and I haven't seen the play, but it is a brand new production. It's playing right now. If it didn't just finish, it's playing at the Paper Mill Playhouse, which is in Millburn, New Jersey. It's a playhouse I've been to several times and love going. They've won 2 Tony Awards, the theater itself, and a lot of shows that play there transfer to Broadway. So we'll see what Bull Durham's prospects are, if it ends up going to Broadway or touring, or if anything comes from it. But yeah, it should be a fun watch. I would want to see the movie first so I can kind of compare.
Now, the last one that you had, and this was your hot take, and this is one that uh, you had discussed with me years and years ago, and I've come to peace with your assessment, but your all-time most overrated movie, not just for sports movies, but among all movies, is Field of Dreams.
Yep. And I'm willing to
Okay,
die on
talk
that
about
hill.
this.
It's just
The
like,
floor is yours.
it's just pure schmaltz as far as the eye can see. Like I can't take it when movies, plays, books, whatever it is just so over the top in terms of trying to manipulate your emotions, like so clearly trying to do that. It's there wasn't much there for me. And then on top of that, I don't think, and this is something else I'll probably get rung around the neck for, but I don't think Kevin Costner is a very good actor. On top of everything. So it is what it is. But I remember watching it years ago. I've only seen it once, and I just rolled my eyes so hard that I think my head hurt. But it's not something I'm going to get back to anytime soon.
Truthfully, I think that my favorite part of that movie, and it is one, it didn't make my top 5 list, which when I put the list together, I was almost a little surprised, and I was trying to figure out how I could get it in the top 5, but I just couldn't. But one of my favorite parts of that movie is actually when the James Earl Jones character is first introduced, and we're in his apartment, and and he's and he's chasing Kevin Costner around with a crowbar. Like that. That, for whatever reason, is just one of those smile and laugh inducing scenes for me, regardless of how many times I've seen it. And I think that part of it is because I feel like James Earl Jones is having a lot of fun in that scene.
Yeah.
So, there are some times where you can tell that there's a part in a movie or a show or whatever that someone's really into and really likes that part of the script. So, anyway, so I am gonna you mentioned the whole trying to manipulate emotions and such, and so this isn't something that we talked about beforehand. But as someone who is a film enthusiast, as you are, one of the clips that I put out on TikTok got some response, and it was with regard to what was my most overrated movie, and that's Remember the Titans. And my issue with Remember the Titans, for those who haven't seen the clip or heard the episode, is mostly that it deviates so far from the actual story of T.C. Williams and tries to make it into something else, that it loses authenticity and it loses credibility as far as I'm concerned. And really, it's trying to draw emotions from something that is really patently false. And basically the response that I got was mostly that people who are watching the movie don't necessarily care about that, and it's essentially a straw man argument. And you could say that about a lot of different movies. So, from your perspective, is there a line when you're doing a made for or not made for TV, excuse me, based on a true story where eventually you've got to like kind of hang up that claim when you're when you're manipulating the story as much as some do?
Yeah, I think sometimes you have to, depending on the story, I think sometimes you have to um, manipulate it a little bit, maybe smooth out some edges a little bit, and add some fictional elements in order to really increase interest. Because often the true life story isn't as interesting as or cinematic as someone would ordinarily want it to be. Sometimes it is, but also a lot of times I think, especially with big movie studios, a lot of this stuff, these films are kind of made by committee, and that
Mm.
becomes an issue where a lot relies on things like test screenings and a whole variety of other factors and people around a big boardroom and asking these questions and putting kind of calculations behind it instead of really thinking about the heart of it and the emotion of it.
Hmm.
But if you have that emotional piece, and as long as that is true, I think that's the most important thing. I don't mind it so much when things get fudged as much as I would if the emotion weren't there. What one movie that you guys discussed that is another one that I just couldn't stand was The Blind Side, and I think that kind of did the
Hmm.
exact same thing. I never read the book. I'm not familiar with the story, but it was another one of those where it just felt like this is clearly being told from the perspective of this woman, and it's a very like white savior kind of story. And on top of that, I thought Sandra Bullock's performance was so insanely over the top, but I don't know the real person. I was very disappointed she won an Oscar for it, but I think it was a year or two later she was in Gravity, and she didn't win for that, but she gave an excellent performance, and I felt like I could let out a breath because now I know she's capable of an Oscar-worthy performance. So I became okay with her having that Oscar just for the wrong movie, is all it was.
All right. Well, thanks for I love getting different perspectives, and I think that the because I did go back and forth in the comments with this person a little bit, and I think that they thought that I was being argumentative, but really I love that kind of conversation. And after and I conceded a couple of points to this person, and I felt like it was such a good perspective to bring in that I thought, especially with somebody else like you who uh, has an affinity for film, who has worked in industries or adjacent industries and has an understanding of the way some of these things work, that it was good to kind of draw back to this. And so when it came to mind, I was just like, you know what, let's see if we can talk about this a little bit. So thank you for indulging me for a minute.
Yeah,
Well,
and
yeah.
ultimately, film is art, and the whole purpose of art is to get people talking and having conversations and viewing things in different ways. Not every movie or aspect of every movie is for everyone, so I'd argue that movie did its job just by nature of that conversation it spurred.
Well, you know, all movies should be art. I can't. I
Sure.
don't know if everyone necessarily is.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, there's a lot of times much more of a corporate structure than maybe
Right.
there should be. Uh, but
Hmm.
speaking of corporate structures, let's talk about Disney.
Yeah.
So this was this was a solo trip that you took. I'm sorry, even the timeline is a little bit hazy at this point. We had talked about doing something earlier when you first got back, but schedules just didn't line up. So, um, what when exactly did this trip take place, and what was this just a, hey, you know what, I'm going to go to Disney, or did you have plans?
Yeah, it was late August going into early September, and I had planned this many months ago. After so the first time I made an appearance here on your podcast was to talk about my trip at D23, the
Hmm.
fan event in Anaheim last year, and I think I was on such a high from that experience that I thought I want to check out Destination D23 next, and that's in Orlando every other year in alternating years. So Disney, they encourage you, if you want to do Destination D23, you should book your hotels now, book your flights, all that stuff, like months in advance. So I did all that. And then the day for the ticket sales for Destination D23 went on sale, I couldn't get a ticket. I think I didn't wait that long. It wasn't a situation like Oogie Boogie Bash in Disneyland a couple years ago where I waited for, I think it was upwards of close to 18 hours and still didn't get a ticket. Disney's virtual queues, they need to work on that. This time I didn't wait.
Well, no, they don't, because they know they have the demand, so they don't have to fix a thing.
Yeah, that is true. And people like me are going to keep coming back regardless of how much they feel jilted by it. So you're right. But I kept my trip. I thought I love Disney. I haven't been to Disney World in a very long time. And in 4 years was my last trip. I don't go regularly. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to have kind of a lot of firsts and experience it through a different perspective. So it was my first time going to Walt Disney World solo. I'd done that in Disneyland once. It was my first time staying on property, my first time, second time really experiencing just like the table service dining. But there were a lot of things, exploring resorts I had never done before. So I went in completely fresh face. And the way I thought about it as after the first day or so was like, you know those videos, Chris, where there's like a newborn giraffe or a horse and it tries to take its first steps and it's on these really tall, skinny legs and it kind of falls all over the place. That's what it felt like to me being at Disney World. I felt like, what is this place? I've never been here before. I had no idea what I was doing. I was all thumbs. And I had a vacation plan, a Disney vacation planner who did an incredible job, but there's only so much that they can kind of like prep you for. And I thought, I've been here before, so I'll just kind of roll with the punches. It's going to be a great time. And as we'll discuss, I came across a bunch of stumbling blocks and, I tried to laugh at them. And in some cases I was able to laugh about them in the moment, but I can especially do that now. But towards the end of the trip, it was like one thing after another. And I just got to think I was in some sort of weird, bizarro world.
It was the baby bird got kicked out of the nest and had to figure it out on his own. And
yeah, it's more like I was suplexed out of the nest.
This was a first for you. You mentioned something like staying on property at a Disney resort, and you stayed at Pop Century. And now Pop Century is somewhere that I've stayed for all of like one night. We stayed there once before we went on a Disney cruise. So and it rained that day night. So our experience with Pop Century in and of itself was not all that immersive from the standpoint of we got there, we got to our room, we ate some food, I found a place to get drinks, and then the next day in the rain we did a little bit of exploring, but it was in the rain. So talk a little bit about your impressions of Pop Century, which is gaining social media wise some traction as an underrated resort.
Yeah, it was cool. It's only the second Disney resort I've ever stayed at. The first one was the Disneyland Hotel. I wanted to try the OG in Disneyland. This time, I wanted a value resort because I'm not made of money, and I was supposed to stay originally when I thought I was going to get Destination D23 tickets. I had plans to stay at Coronado Springs and I forgot which other. I think it was one of the All-Star resorts. I think it was All-Star Movies. And then the plans shifted and I decided to stay all 5 or 6 nights in Pop Century. I didn't see it before, but the rooms I know were recently remodeled and they look really great. Mm-hmm. And actually, I thought this was interesting. The rooms were nicer, in my opinion, than the Disneyland hotel rooms where I was paying like twice the price. Disneyland only has 3 resorts, unlike the 20 plus that Disney World has. And Disneyland does not have any value resorts. So everything, you're going to be spending a pretty penny regardless of where you're staying there. And there were a lot of kind of like older fixtures in Disneyland Hotel. I had a great time there, but with this Pop Century, everything was fresh and new. And it felt like a little bit of an upgrade compared to what my previous experience. The resort itself is huge. I think there were 10 buildings or so. I was in like the 8th building. I was in the building that was the farthest away from everything else. So it was like a mile, it felt like anyway, to walk from the lobby and where all the shuttles are to my building. I was in one of the 90s buildings. The theming is, and maybe this is true of all resorts because my experience is limited, but the theming is all outdoors. Nothing inside, like your room isn't decorated like from the 90s or anything like that, which was fine. So
Now, that would be cool.
it would be cool. But then also I was actually kind of glad that it wasn't that way because I didn't feel like I was missing anything like a 90s room versus a 70s room. So I was able to still walk around and see how everything was kind of laid out and decorated across all the buildings. And it was great. Lots of great photo spots. It's right on the Skyliner, which was very helpful, but also caused some problems the first night for me, which I can talk about in terms of transportation and getting from Epcot back, which should be a very simple thing, but I had an issue there, and it took I think 3 buses for me to get back to my hotel. So, but I really did enjoy the room or the hotel. The gift shop is really large and expansive. Not a lot of food options. They have one spot for that, but I just had breakfast one day and it was fine. I can't really speak for how great the food was otherwise.
Now, you mentioned that you did some resort exploration as well.
Yeah.
Was Art of Animation one of those that you checked out?
No, it wasn't. I went to the Contemporary because I've been wanting to check that out ever since the Behind the Attraction episode on the Contemporary Resort. I thought it was really cool on Disney Plus, and I'm a big fan of Mary Blair's artwork, so I wanted to see the murals that she designed in there, and then Riviera a little bit, and Animal Kingdom Lodge. That may have been it. There may have been another one in there. So I didn't do too many resorts. Boardwalk also. But I did want to kind of look at Disney through a different perspective, the perspective of the resorts, to see that, Disney spans beyond just the 4 parks. There's a lot more stuff that you can experience outside of them.
Yeah, Art of Animation's it's another one that's kind of sprawling. We did explore that a little bit too. I think that same day when we explored Pop Century, but it does, it. And of course, it's a lot more geared towards children and families, but it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of different characters from different eras of animation sprinkled throughout. And we didn't even see the whole thing, but that was a fun exploration. And yeah, we've done some exploration. Eileen and I took an adults only trip, and we ended up going to see Boardwalk, and we didn't go and see Yacht and Beach Club because I think it was under refurbishment at the time, so we didn't have but we've done the loop around the Magic Kingdom resorts and checked those out as well. On our last trip we checked out the new Polynesian Tower as well, so which is much different kind of architecture than the Polynesian, the traditional Polynesian, but very beautiful in its own right. So yeah, anybody who has extra time at Walt Disney World, there's a whole different aspect that you can explore, beyond the parks.
Yeah, and one of my biggest challenges was figuring out how to fit them in because I don't go to the parks as frequently. I'm very much a if not rope drop, near rope drop kind of person who also stays until park close. So I went pretty hard at the park. So I'm thinking, how do I fit in some of these resorts? Because I want to have that experience also. And luckily I was able to get some in, but there was a little bit of stress on my part trying to figure out how to make it all work.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the stress. You had already mentioned a little bit of a snafu with some transportation getting back to your resort from Epcot. So talk me through this. How did we end up where we ended up?
This was my first day. I think I live in New York, so I landed in Orlando around noon or 1:00. And that evening I went to the Boardwalk, which I'd never been to before, to meet up with my friend's parents who live there in Orlando, and her dad is a cast member. He doesn't work in the parks themselves. And in fact, he hasn't been in the parks, or at least not in Epcot, in a really long time. So we had dinner at Flying Fish, which was incredible, by the way. And afterward, he wanted to go to Epcot and see if like his cast member pass or something still worked and if he could still have access. So he was able to get me in, and we just sort of walked around a little bit. And then they left, and he accidentally misinformed me in saying, "Oh, just go to the front of the park, leave the park, go to the shuttles, and you can take a shuttle right back to Pop Century." So I left the park to go back to my hotel, and didn't know, because I did not do research about transportation. This almost everything I'm going to talk about, Chris, is user error. So I'm just like learn from me. I'm crawling so others can run. So I left the park, and I didn't know at the time the only way you can get back to Pop Century from Epcot is through the Skyliner, which is on the other end of the park. But I can't go back into the park. Once I realized I can't go back into the park to go to the Skyliner because he let me in through his pass and I'm no longer with him. So I can't re-access this park. So I go to one of the shuttles and I ask a cast member a couple cast members who are at one of them, and they say, "Oh, geez, the only way you could do this is to take a shuttle to Animal Kingdom Lodge, and then from there take another shuttle to Disney Springs, and then from there take another shuttle back to Pop Century." And he even said himself, "Yeah, Disney doesn't make this easy." So I thought to myself, well, that's kind of annoying, but also this is my first day. I know I'm going to have a great time. This is the first and only snafu that I'm going to deal with. Idiot. And I'm just gonna laugh through it. And it was also like really late evening, and I have no idea where I am. Again, I've never been to one of the resorts before. I think I'd been to Disney Springs once before. I didn't really know where I was going or had even full faith that these buses would take me where they're supposed to take me. They did ultimately, but it took me, I think, well over an hour to get back to the hotel. I got there late, but I made it safe and sound. And that was my first experience, and also a lesson for me that not all parks have shuttles that go to every resort. So like you would know better than I would, if they're connected via Skyliner or boat or monorail, then they likely don't have a shuttle also. I feel that they should, but they don't. And then you just have to kind of know where all the different modes of transportation will take you.
Yeah, I think that the caveat there is like, if the Skyliner isn't running, then they run buses or something like that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where it's just like, well, maybe, not everybody's cool with the Skyliner, and of course maybe those are things you should know when you're booking the hotel too. But yeah, I do think that is something that is a little bit of an oversight. I don't think it's an oversight. I think they know exactly what they're doing, and they figure we've got the Skyliner, we can save some money on the buses here. But yeah, it seems restrictive.
Yeah, and the app will tell you how to get from point A to point B, but just finding that piece, that map feature on the app it's not user friendly, and it's not the easiest to navigate. So they can at least make that a little bit more friendly to users who are kind of new with this. But again, I went on this trip thinking I'm just going to roll with the punches. I'm going to have a good time. And that was my fault because I didn't do enough research. But I also thought I'd been to Disney before. So how hard could this be?
All right. So we've had our, Apollo 13, Tom Hanks. I guess we've had our glitch for this mission moment. Yeah. And so now, I think that it was the next day was your Animal Kingdom day. Was that?
Yeah.
Or how did that? So because I seem to recall you had actually reached out to me kind of saying, "Hey, how should I do this? I've got a reservation at Animal Kingdom Lodge at this time."
Right.
And those kinds of things always stress me out because I'm just like, I don't want to be responsible for somebody else, having a timing issue or end up getting stuck somewhere or something like that. So I will readily admit that I was stressing about that all day. And then you texted me and you're just like, yeah, I've got like 2.5 hours or something to kill. I was like, oh man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry to put you through that. You're one of like three different Disney resources that I use when I have these sorts of questions. I know a lot. I've been to Animal Kingdom before. I don't think I had ever spent a full day there, and I know most people consider it a half-day park. So I had a reservation at Animal Kingdom Lodge for I think like 6 p.m. or something. It was sometime after the park would have already been closed, and I was thinking I'm gonna get there early hours. I was staying on a resort, so I think it was like 7:30 a.m. I can get there, and I was concerned about just the timing of it all. Like, would I have enough to do in this park to go straight to the reservation after? Or if I left that park, because I did have park hopper, if I went to a different park, would I make it back in time? Like, there was a lot of calculations going through my mind, and which caused some of the stress. Thankfully, that was the least, ended up being the least of my concerns throughout the entire trip. I actually loved Animal Kingdom way more than I remembered loving it in the past. And I think it's because it reminded me of Disneyland. The reason and we talked about this when I was on your show talking about Disneyland, I love it because, for a lot of reasons, but one reason is because it is a lot smaller, so it's much more contained. You can leave after a full day and feel like you've done almost everything there is to do. And so you feel very accomplished. And I felt that way about Animal Kingdom. I think I did every ride that I could do. I even went to Rafiki's Planet Watch, and that area where you could like draw, like we drew Goofy, like that, the animation piece, which was a lot of fun. And it was just a chill day, very relaxed ultimately. So that was a good way to start off this trip. And then after that, and maybe that's why everything became stressful after, because I'm thinking that first full day was so great. But then, when you hit Magic Kingdom and Epcot and Hollywood Studios, they're generally bigger parks, not in terms of size. Animal Kingdom is the largest, of course, but in terms of things to do, it becomes a lot more stressful. And also just in terms of the amount of people who are there. This is late summer. It's supposed to be one of those times when it's fewer people ultimately. It's generally, I think, considered one of the cheaper, like off-season times to be there because kids are starting to go back to school. But it's also the rainy season.
And it's hot as Hades.
It's hot as Hades. Yeah, like you're standing on the surface of the sun, and also there's storms coming through every 2 seconds, right. and that just added to the stress also. So yeah, the amount of times I had to figure out how to go through security with my umbrella and my backpack filled with like phone chargers and stuff. And every security guard is telling me something different in terms of how to hold my umbrella to get through. That caused its own stress, but I made it through, and it was fine.
So there will be a separate one thing with security that always sets Eileen, like Eileen gets checked more often than anybody else, is her glasses case.
Yeah.
Did you have a glasses case, and did you have that kind of issue as well?
I had a sunglasses case, and I don't think that set anything off. The thing that all the different security guards, every time they went through my bag, they would pull something out and say, yep, this will do it. It was always my phone chargers, umbrella, and I had one of those little first aid kits, like the Welly brand of first aid. It's like a little tin with Band-Aids and stuff. And they said that always sets it off. So after a day or two, I kind of wisened up a little bit, and I put all of those things in the same little pouch, but it was still my backpack. And eventually I started holding them up to go through security, because they tell you like your umbrella, hold it like a lightsaber and walk through. And sometimes that worked for me, sometimes it didn't. And the security guards were all telling me different stuff. So it got to be a little confusing.
So one thing with the timing of Animal Kingdom, and when I was thinking about it and giving you advice on it, I wasn't thinking that it was just going to be you. Like, I'm thinking about the way that I'm maneuvering through that park with a 7-year-old or sometimes younger, and how much longer that can take. So I think that was something that definitely I'm going to take in consideration when I'm giving advice in the future, is who's there, who are you with, and what are those kinds of circumstances, because that can totally alter the experience.
Yeah, Disney parks are not for kids, Chris. They don't belong there, as far as I'm concerned. They make everything so much worse.
All right, mark the tape on that one. So you had dining reservations at Animal Kingdom
Yeah.
Lodge, and this is going to get into a larger conversation that, one of the things that you mentioned was that you were experiencing a fair amount of stress in making sure that you got what you felt was your money's worth as far as the dining plan goes. Now,
Yeah.
the dining plan is something we haven't used since pre-COVID. Like, they shut it off during COVID and in the reopening. And then by the time that it reemerged, we were kind of like, well, we usually just do a grocery delivery to the room, and we'll make lunches and we'll eat breakfast in the room. So this, is not a value to us. So from your perspective, you're a solo traveler, who may or may not have certain tastes. What's your assessment of the value of that and making sure that you get your money's worth?
I will say I wanted a full, like, kind of immersive Disney experience to try all the Disney things I've never done before, at least to check them off. And that includes the dining plan. I can say confidently, unless they change some aspects of the dining plan, I probably won't do it again. There's pros and cons to it for sure. But as I was planning this trip, I thought to myself, I want to try more quick service places I haven't been to before. I want to try more table service places I haven't been to before. So I figured each day my goal was one table service, one quick service, and one snack. And there's a dining plan option that is exactly that, the table service dining plan. So I thought, perfect, let me go with that. On paper, it's perfect. But then a lot of wrenches kind of get thrown into things. So like, for example, when I was at Epcot, it was the first day of Food and Wine Festival, and so I want to like eat my way around the world a little bit. Right. And you can use those meals as quick service meals, but now it's all kind of skewed. It's like, if I use this for quick service, then what about tomorrow? And I guess I'll just have to pay for this one out of pocket. And it's all done by credits. And if I miss this table service dining reservation, which did happen at one point, I lose those credits unless I can reapply them elsewhere. So when do I have time to eat at a table service place to make that work? And then I mentioned my friend's parents. Her mom gave me 2 free coupons for snacks, 2 free snacks. So I thought, great, I'm going to use those too. But I already have my snack credits on the dining plans, and I have to like factor in more snacks. It got to a point where it was me calculating a lot of things in my head to try to figure out how to make it work. I mean, the app makes it very easy to see how many credits you have at any time. And that's great. But then figuring out, when do I have time to eat all these things? And I think I need to do like 3 quick services today to make it all worthwhile. It got to a point where I was having dessert at one of the table service restaurants, just a Sunday. There's always room for ice cream, right? I couldn't finish it. And I think that's the first time in my entire life I was not able to finish a dessert. And I felt sick, like actually in pain when I stood up, because I'd eaten so much that day trying to like fit all this in. And it got to be really crazy. So I don't think I'll do the dining plan again, but the pros of it for me were, I was able to eat at some table service restaurants that I likely wouldn't have eaten at otherwise, because they would have been too expensive. So like the Hollywood Brown Derby, for example, at Hollywood Studios, I had lunch there. Mm-hmm. They actually accidentally screwed up the dining plan for me. Like, they forgot that I was on the dining plan, even though they knew initially. So they charged me for that meal. It was $80 for a salad, a Sprite, and a dessert. And that was it. At lunchtime, no less, not even dinner. $80. And then I had to go back and ask them, to correct the issue. And they were able to do it. The cast members were fantastic. But it was one of a few times throughout this trip where I had to go to a cast member to try to rectify something. So I was able to, I wouldn't have eaten there otherwise, because that's just way too rich for my blood.
How do you justify $80 for what you just described?
Yeah. And I'm not.
How is it possible?
And that's exactly what it was. It was, I think, the Cobb salad, the original Brown Derby is I guess the inventor of the Cobb salad. So they probably treat that as a premium. But it was just a salad. Like, we've had Cobb
it's
salads
a salad.
Each ingredient costs like 5 cents, or who knows these days. Yeah, and a Sprite and a dessert, and that was it. And I was shocked because I wasn't looking at the bills so much. They give you the bill, but I wasn't really looking at them at the other restaurants because I knew that my dining credits were covering it. So I just signed my name and add the tip, and that was it. But this one was like, wow, that's insane.
Now, one of the questions that I have about the dining plan, and I'm trying to remember way back when, but I seem to recall, and we did a snack, quick service, table service kind of deal when we would do it. But there was a period of time where they would, with the table service, it included dessert. So you were getting like the meal. Is that still the case?
It is.
Because
yeah,
I was feeling like this is way too much dessert, as weird of a thing as that is to say. It's just like, I cannot just keep eating dessert at lunch and dinner every day. And what we were doing was we were using the snacks for our breakfast, and so we were going to the quick service like at the resort and getting a cinnamon bun for breakfast or something like that, something that qualified as a snack. So just the amount of sugar that we intake just from the things that we were getting with the dining plan was just like, this is dangerous.
It is. I gained 5 pounds, and I still have those extra 5 pounds on me. So it's going to be a while before those. And with all the walking you do, like it's all day walking all the time in the parks, but it doesn't matter. You eat like one cinnamon bun, and you're ruined for the rest of the year.
So you started at Animal Kingdom. We kind of diverged into some other topics. What was next for you?
I think next was Epcot, I believe, the next day.
Okay. And you had some interesting experiences at Epcot. So first off, I believe you misplaced something.
Epcot was the one day I was not solo. I have a very good friend named Kayla, and she said it's okay to use her name. She lives around Fort Lauderdale, and she drove up to spend the day at Epcot with me. So we met at Pop Century, took the Skyliner in. So we're now at the International Plaza in the back of the park. And we start our way around the world. And I think Morocco is like the second or third country from there. So pretty soon we're going through Morocco. And I'll say as a side thing, I've been to Morocco a couple of times. And what they have in the park is super authentic. Like it felt exactly like and looked exactly like what I remember from being in like Fez and Marrakesh and other places. So big shout out to the Imagineers for the authenticity they put there. While we're there, we see the sign on a door going into a room that says like Princess Jasmine photos. She's in there taking photos, and my friend's like, ooh, I love Princess Jasmine. I have to have my photo taken with Princess Jasmine. She's my favorite. And I think, all right, whatever. I'm not a person who no shade on people who have their photos taken with characters. I you be you. That's just not my thing. So I go in with her. It's in this room, and there's only like a one set of people, like a family or friends of like 2 or 3 people ahead of us in line. And so Kayla gives me her purse and her phone so that I could take a photo kind of behind the official photographer, because she didn't want to spend the $75 to get the actual photo. So I'm standing kind of behind and to the side of the photographer, and I bend down to put her purse on the floor, and I hear something drop, and I look and I see a pair of glasses are sitting there. I thought, oh, I accidentally dropped Kayla's glasses. I'll just give them to her when we're done with the photo. Take the photo, pick up her purse and her glasses, and I hand them to her, and she's immediately like, those aren't mine. Those aren't my glasses. And I look at them, I'm like, oh, okay. They must belong. I'm thinking they must belong to the people who were ahead of us in line. So I give them to the cast member, and I say, those people must have forgotten their glasses. So here you are. And then we just, continued along our way. And now we're like around the world. We're in Norway now. And we're in the queue for Frozen Ever After. And it's an indoor queue. So I go to take off my prescription sunglasses and put my regular glasses on. And whoops, I don't. And we had a moment, she and I, where we look at each other and she's looking at me like, you idiot, you gave them your own glasses. How did you not recognize your own glasses? I didn't recognize my glasses because I'm not looking at them. I'm looking through them. I don't look. So, but I'm not panicked at all because I gave them to a cast member. Like if I left them in the bathroom, I'd probably panic, but I gave them to a cast member. We'll do this ride. We'll go back. Hopefully they're still there. If not, they're not there. We'll go to Lost and Found. And while we're in the queue, just for safety, I went online and did a Lost and Found report with Disney, which I had to do a couple years ago when I lost my credit card at Disneyland because I only lose important items at Disney parks. I've never lost like a pack of gum. I only lose credit cards and prescription eyeglasses. And I swear to you, I'm a very responsible person otherwise. So we do the ride and then we walk all the way back to Morocco. And if you're like envisioning World Showcase where these buildings are from each other, this is a massive park, Epcot. So we go back to Morocco and I turn the knob at the door in the room where Jasmine was and it's locked. So they're gone. I go to like next door, there's a couple bartenders setting up and I ask them in the off chance that maybe the glasses were turned into them. They don't know what I'm talking about. So then we go to the very front of the park, which again, you're literally walking around the world all the way to go to the front of the park to guest services and Lost and Found. And I tell the story to the cast member and he laughs and is like, wow, that's really funny. And I'm like, thank you, cast member. I know I'm an idiot. Thank you for validating this. And he's like, we don't have your glasses. But chances are they're going to be turned in by the end of the day. And then at that point, we have to process them and then send them to Disney Springs. And it could take up to 2 days for you to get them back. And I'm not saying anything, but in my mind, my internal monologue is, I know who I gave them to. I know what time it was. I know where it was. Can't you just like check the schedule to see like who was working the Jasmine photo line and like radio them and they can come to me or I'll go to them. Like it shouldn't be this hard. But I didn't say any of that. I'm very like gracious, like, thank you so much for your help. And he also says you can check the other Lost and Found that's closer to Morocco. I didn't know there was another Lost and Found at the other end. So we walk around the world again to the other Lost and Found. Guy doesn't have the glasses either. So I just go the rest of the day wearing my prescription sunglasses. I'm eating in Topolino's. I know you've been there. It's kind of a fancy restaurant. And I'm looking like I'm too cool for school wearing sunglasses the entire time. Super embarrassed. I'm like taking them off while the waiter's coming over. And then she spent the night in my room. So we had written Ratatouille earlier, and which I've been on before. I love that ride. But we both realized neither one of us had seen that movie in a long time. So we decided to watch Ratatouille that night. So I'm in my.
Were you watching that with your sunglasses on?
I'm watching it with my sunglasses. So like picture me sitting upright in my bed in my pajamas in a dark room with sunglasses on, watching Ratatouille. And it was, and then like the next morning with my sunglasses, like it was just crazy. I'm not used to wearing my sunglasses is the thing. I usually only wear them when I travel. What ended up happening was I had my glasses. I was wearing one of those Roosevelt's button-up shirts, Disney button-up shirts, and I had my glasses kind of tucked into one of the buttons. So when I crouched down to put her purse down, that's what fell. And I did get an email from Disney saying, we found your item the next day. So I don't remember where I was at the time, but I was able to kind of book it from whatever park I was in to Disney Springs and pick it up. And I got my glasses. And that was a very harrowing experience and 100% my fault. But I also felt like this shouldn't be this hard. It's especially if you know where you left it and who you gave it to and what time it was. There should be an easier process here. But I'd gone through that process with a credit card before with Lost and Found. And luckily they found that too. So I had the utmost faith in Disney that they would save me. Thankfully, they did.
At least while you were at Epcot, you had no other snags or snafus. Everything else went perfectly, right?
None at all. Everything was great. It was. I went back a day or two later, and because one of the things I did before I even left for Disney was I thought I was a little intimidated. I've done Disneyland solo, but never Disney World. And Disney World being as huge as it is, with so many parks and everything else, I thought there's no way I can fit everything I want to do in. So what I did was I put together a list of like the 5 or so attractions per park that I wanted to do in order to feel like I had like as completed an experience as I can, so I could feel accomplished. And one of them was Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind for Epcot. I'd never been on it before. The last time I was in the park, it was under construction. I'd only heard great things. I know a lot of people consider it arguably the best ride, certainly the best ride at Epcot. And I wasn't leaving until I got to experience that ride. So I got into the queue. I forgot how long I was waiting, maybe an hour or something. And have you been on this ride, Chris?
Oh, it's terrific.
Okay, so then you can explain to me what happens at certain aspects that I would have missed. But you go through the queue, and then at the end of it is a big open room, right? And there's like 4 or 5 doors that swing open, and you go through the doors. I have no idea what happens when you go through the doors, and I'll explain why I don't know in a second. I think there's a pre-show, maybe?
Yes.
Maybe what I heard. Yeah, so I didn't see the pre-show. So I'm in line, and there's like screens and stuff with like the characters interacting on the screens, and they're kind of glitching a little bit, but not in a way that was like, this is part of the show. Like there was clearly something wrong, and I didn't think much of it. They're glitching, whatever that happens. And at the moment that I stepped into that big open room after I'd waited for like an hour, at that point, we're left waiting, and we're waiting some more, and then we're waiting some more. And then we're waiting some more, and people, including myself, are starting to sit on the floor. We're like pacing. We're walking around, like wondering what's going on. There's never an announcement. No one knows what's going on. I don't think the cast members knew what was going on. I figured the ride is down. That happens sometimes. It'll be back up soon. I don't know how many hours I waited before I checked the app.
Hours?
I think I was in there ultimately for 3 hours in that one room.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where it was like, I could leave. They're allowing us to leave, but I've waited this long, so I don't want to leave. And then the ride is functioning 2 minutes later, so I'm just gonna like stick it out. And also, I had another dining reservation, this one at Magic Kingdom, and I had time to spare in between. So I'm sitting in this room, and I check the app, and I see that yes, the ride is down, but then I also notice all the other rides are down. And I'm hearing through the grapevine that all the rides, or most of the rides in all 4 parks, are down. And this was, in fact, the day that a lot of people who follow Disney news know is when there was the big power outage that happened that affected all 4 parks. And I think there were celebrities tweeting about it. And I got caught in it at Cosmic Rewind. And again, we're not getting any word as to what's going on. So some people left, but most people were staying and thinking, let's wait this out. Eventually there's a recorded voice that we hear that's like, it's whatever the voice is when the doors swing open for you to walk through to like prep you for the ride, and the doors open and everyone's like cheering, like, we're up, yes, we're gonna finally get on this ride, and then the doors automatically shut. And then that happened another 3 or 4 times over the next 2 hours maybe. At one point, I see a cast member walk in. By the way, I'm looking at my watch because I'm like, I have reservations and at Skipper Canteen, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Going back to the dining plan issue, I have 1 or 2 credits, whatever that restaurant was worth. How am I going to use them if I miss this? If I miss it, are they going to charge me like a no-show fee? Which they ultimately did, but I was able to kind of fight that and get the money back because they wouldn't let me change the reservation. The app told me it was too close to the reservation. I had to call the restaurant. So I called twice. No one picked up. And the recording on the call said, you have to do this on the app. And they kept pointing fingers to each other, the phone and the app. So I tried, but I couldn't get through. Ultimately, I saw a cast member come in and talk to the other cast members who were kind of managing that open room, and hear them saying something like let's just we're ready to go. Let's just let them through this door. So they open the emergency exit, and we start going out that way. So we're going downstairs, a flight of stairs. This is clearly not meant to be for just regular like park goers. This is unless it's an emergency. And then it leads us to the loading area for the ride. So now we're like, okay, clearly whatever was behind those swinging doors, that pre-show, we didn't get to experience. So now we're in the loading area, and I'm standing there for another half hour before we get on the ride. And I'm seeing the ride. It's going, like they're testing it. It's going without anyone in it. And each time it comes around, it felt like a big tease because none of us were on it. I was the first person in line. And so they finally let us on, and I was the first person on that ride after this power outage situation. And
now, how does that make you feel? You're like, okay, I've seen it go by, so I think it's okay, but
I'm only seeing the cars like coming in. I'm not actually seeing the physical ride. So I know nothing about this ride. I just know that it's cool. So if I knew what the ride was, I'd probably freak out thinking I don't want to be the first person on this ride. But we're on the ride, and yes, it's an incredible ride, but I was so just like stressed out and disenchanted by this whole thing, which obviously like no one could. I think to this day they don't know what caused that power outage, but there was a big storm that was coming through, so I assume that was related. So like none of the cast members obviously had anything to do with it, and there was nothing they could have done. But the whole situation was just so stressful and anxiety inducing that I'm sitting on this ride. I'm like twisting and twirling and swirling around on this track, and I'm just like, okay, all right. Like it just like I didn't allow myself to really enjoy it because I had just waited 3.5 hours to get on it, and was also missing my dining reservation, and I'm stressed out over the dining plan. So it all kind of was like a no pun intended, but like a perfect storm of things that kind of I don't want to say ruined my experience, but definitely left me with a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth.
Well, that just means that you've got to book another Disney trip and go back, right?
Yep. Yeah, and not during rainy season, preferably.
Right. So we could go on and do keep doing a full trip report, but there's another aspect of your trip that I want to get to. But before that, was there anything else new or a new experience for you or notable about your Walt Disney World experience that really stands out to you?
Yeah. Just very quickly, I'll say I'm a big fan of tours, and I did the Keys to the Kingdom tour, which I had never done before, and that was at Magic Kingdom. It was really cool. It was, I think 6 hours long, and we had this tour guide, super knowledgeable and great, and she took us to all the lands except for Tomorrowland and gave us a lot of great history. I love Disney history. But the best part was we got to go into the Utilidor, which is completely off limits. So I think most people, if you're a Disney fan, chances are that Magic Kingdom is built on 2 levels. And the level that you see where all the rides and attractions are on is the second level. But underneath that is a hidden area, which is basically a city underneath the park. And that's where all the magic really happens. That's where the characters get dressed. They have a sew shop where there are people like mending costumes and things. A lot of different rooms in there. That's where all the real magic happens, and it's off limits to the public unless you're on this tour. So it was cool walking through those halls, and there was like a cast member party happening at the time, so we got to walk through that. We got to see a couple princesses like Aurora completely like in like half costume, if you will. Like Disney would never otherwise allow that. And they're just like waving at you like the normal way, not like the princess way. And that was just a really cool experience. We also got to go on 2 rides, which I didn't know we were going to go on any rides, but we got to do the Jungle Cruise and Haunted Mansion and skip the lines, which was really awesome. I will say, for anyone listening who has never been on this tour and is interested, you're not guaranteed which rides you go on, or even if you get to do 1 or 2. The cast member, the tour guide, mentioned that to me because I was curious. So I don't want to mislead anyone into thinking you're going to definitely do certain rides. But that was a very unexpected surprise to be able to do that. So I was very happy to do that tour and learn more about the park's history.
All right. So the other part of this trip that was notable, at least notable on social media, and your thoughts there,
Yeah.
was you also went to see how the other half lives,
Yeah.
and you checked out Universal. Um,
Yeah.
I don't want to oversell this or undersell this, so I'm just going to ask you generally, talk a little bit about what your plan was, and how you went through it, and what some of your big takeaways are from Universal.
Chris, I didn't have a plan. And that was probably the problem. I treated it like Disney. Like again, like Disney, I'd been there before, except for Epic Universe is, a brand new park. So I'd never been there. And I thought, I don't remember in the previous couple times I've been to Universal, or the one time I went in the Universal Hollywood, I don't remember having any issues at all. So I thought, let me just go and kind of enjoy myself and take each thing as it comes. And I did stay at one of the Universal resorts, which had some pros and cons to it, but that I won't even go into. But basically, I did experience all three parks. The first day, I got one of those passes. It was 2 days, and the first day was Universal Orlando or Universal Florida and Islands of Adventure on the same day. And then the next day was all day in Epic Universe. And that first day was very eye-opening because I hadn't done my research. I did not realize how many policies Universal has in place for its parks and for specific rides. There's a lot. Have you been to Universal, Chris?
So the last time I was at Universal, the big rides were the ET ride, the Jaws ride, and a 3D Terminator 2 show. So I think I was about 8.
Oh, okay, all right. I did. They at least still have the ET ride. I'm not sure about the others, and I did do the ET ride again. I did that the first time I was there in 1993. So I wanted, for nostalgia's sake, do it again. I went to the park just like I did with Disney with my backpack that only had like essential items in it. It's at this point it's early September. It's still very hot. I had a fan in there, my umbrella. There was rain in the forecast. Just those basic things that you would need. And I did not realize that I'm going to make up a percentage here. I want to say that 70% of the rides at Universal require you to put your stuff in a locker before you can go on those rides. And in my whole 4 or 5 days at Disney, there was only one ride that required lockers, and that was Tron Light Cycle Run.
Tron.
And that was its own issue that we'll talk about that in another podcast. That ride, great ride, but it's also very confusing in different ways. But aside from that, I'm in the Mummy ride in Universal Florida, and I scan my ticket because they still use like ticket passes instead of apps or of course they don't have like a magic band. So I scan it to open up one of the lockers, and this locker it has to be like 3 inches tall, maybe like don't bring anything larger than a fanny pack to Universal if you're going to go there, because you're going to have to stuff in a locker. And there are larger ones that you can pay for. I think it's $3, but I wasn't going to pay for a locker. So I shoved my backpack somehow into this locker, went on the ride, took my backpack out when I was done. And then when I tried to go into another ride, I scanned my pass again to open up a locker in that ride. And the screen said that I couldn't open up a locker because my locker for the day, and it said duration 24 hours, is that locker I opened at the Mummy ride. And I thought to myself, that's ridiculous. Like, so I have to leave.
So if you want to access anything out of your bag, you have to go back to that attraction?
Well, that's what I thought, Chris, based on what it told me. And I had no reason to believe that that screen would lie to me, right? So but that's what you're thinking is very logical, and that's what I thought too. I'm like, it's first of all, like, we're expecting rain, so I have to run across the park in the rain just to get my umbrella, like, because I can't take it on other rides because it also has to be in a locker. None of it made any sense to me. I posted about this experience on Threads, and I just got eviscerated by a bunch of Universal Park goers who are like, "You're such an idiot! You have no idea what you're doing." And they're basically like, "No, you should have it's not supposed to be that way. You're supposed to be able to open up a locker in any ride. You should have gone to a team member. And I'm thinking, how would I have known that? The screen literally told me that I had one locker reserved for me for the entire day. I didn't know. And I didn't do the research. So that ruined my experience for the whole day because it really limited what rides I could do, because I was under the impression that I had to go back to the Mummy ride every single time I wanted to put my backpack in a locker. So I was very limited in what I could do in those parks, and ultimately didn't even do any rides at Islands of Adventure. And I did a bunch the last time I was there. But then I thought, I'm smart. So now I'm smart. Now I know the second day is Epic Universe. It's the new park. It's the park that Disney's supposed to be afraid of and everyone is raving about. So I left my backpack in the hotel. It was rain was in the forecast, so I had a rain jacket with zippered pockets. And I think the only thing I brought with me was a phone charger because I was going to be out all day. And I had that in my zippered pocket, thinking no issues. I was in the queue for Stardust Racers in Celestial Park, that land in Epic Universe. And I go through the queue. I don't even know how long I was waiting. And at the end of the queue, right before you get on the ride, they have security. There's like a magnetometer or something that you have to go through. And they're like, I set it off. They asked, what do you have in your pocket? And I showed them the charger. And they said, you can't have that. You have to put that in the locker. And I'm looking again with the lockers. And I also say to them, it's in a zippered pocket. It's not going to fall out. Doesn't matter. It has to go in the locker. With that, plus all of the mishaps that I experienced at Disney, like this is the end of my trip. I was just kind of over it. So I just left the line. I didn't even go back in. I didn't put it in the locker. I never rode that ride. And it really affected the rest of the day for me also, thinking I'm going to be smarter than this. And yet there are these issues. Each ride has a sign posted at the start of the queue with like that particular ride's policies. And it's not universal, no pun intended. It's not the same at every ride. And the sign is like 7 paragraphs long. No one's going to read that entire thing. And I don't know. I feel like you go to a park, you should pay admission, you should get in and just worry-free, have a good time. But Universal, from my experience, makes things a lot more complicated. Even dining was complicated. I was hungry, so I went to a couple of different restaurants, and I couldn't figure out how to get food. I go in, and the restaurants, again, my point of reference is Disney. So the restaurants kind of look like a combination of quick service and table service. They look like an in-between. So I couldn't figure out, is this table service? Is it not? And I'm looking around. I don't see like a host station or anything. I see in one of the restaurants, I see a counter at the very back, and it looks like that's where you order food. So I assume you order food there and then sit down and eat. So I go back there, and as I'm getting closer, I realize this is not where you order food. It was something else. I'm looking around trying to figure out how to even dine in this restaurant. And then at the very, very back of the restaurant, in a small sign, like posted on a pillar, it says, please wait to be seated. And I'm thinking two things. Number one, why is this not in the front of the restaurant? Why do you have to walk all the way to the back to see this? And two, I don't see a host stand anywhere. So, and I see like no team members anywhere. So I can't figure out how to even eat. So I left, and then I had kind of the same experience at a different restaurant. When I was being eviscerated on Threads, someone was like, well, you just sit down and scan the QR code and they bring the food to you. I did not know that. I was not at a table. I didn't see a QR code. And also there was a sign that literally said, please wait to be seated. So how would I have known that? You know, some stuff that's as simple as ordering food was this big production. And I didn't understand why it had to be so complicated. Same thing with all the different policies. Every ride is different. If you go to Universal's website, and I checked to make sure right before this, I went there, you can look at all the different rides, and there's different filter options, and you could filter rides based on whether or not you have to remove your prosthetic limb. And Disney does not have any rides like that. Like, that's how specific they are with their policies. And it was just crazy. And speaking of that, I also noticed while I was there are stairs everywhere, especially at Epic. Everything is kind of built on levels. The queues, you have to walk upstairs to be to stay in the queue. There's stairs everywhere. I'm sure in this day and age, I'm sure they had some accessibility areas, ramps and elevators, but none of them were visible. So I don't know what a person with a disability would do in this park. They would probably have to ask a lot of questions to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And I'm very surprised that in 2025, this is still an issue that they haven't quite figured out, or maybe thought they did, but it just wasn't very clear. So yeah, lots of issues with these parks, and I left thinking that the lands are very immersive and they're fantastic and they look wonderful, but Universal just doesn't have the brand love that Disney has. So, you know, like, and we've talked about this, before Epic opened, like leading up to its opening, there was a lot of Disney is scared and this is going to put Disney out of business, which is of course not true at all. And I think the difference is, yes, rides are cool. Disney has cool rides too. But it's not just about the rides or the experiences. It's about the love of the brand itself and the nostalgia. A lot of people feel very connected. This is now the professional marketer in me coming out. A lot of people feel very connected to certain Universal IP, but most people don't care about Universal as a brand in general. But with Disney, you may say, I watched a Pixar movie or a Marvel or Star Wars movie, but a lot of people will say things like, I watched a Disney movie. Like, the brand, the mother parent brand matters in a way that Universal just never really had. And they don't have that feeling of nostalgia and brand love. And that's why the Disney, in my opinion, has nothing to worry about. And I'm sure those Imagineers have been to Epic Universe and have probably been a number of times and are getting ideas and inspiration, and they're just going to create greater things at Disney. But Universal, with all its what I consider to be very complicated policies and the idea that it's so hard to just literally move around the parks, makes it, in my opinion, less of a threat.
Yeah, I think that's a big. I mean, you talked about some of the complications with transportation and things, so it's not like Disney is immune to some of these things, but at the same time, that guest experience, you know, and those little things, that if you make the little things more complicated than they have to be, it takes away from the total experience. And you could have the greatest rides in the world and the best theming, but then, you know, these things that make it harder for people to access that kind of stuff, I think is something of a concern. Now, one thing that I had a couple of people who did one of the advanced experiences at Epic, and one of the things that they, if I recall, were talking about was, yeah, there are some things with crowd flow and everything like that need to get worked out. Is that kind of what you're talking about with this, or was there an issue in terms of crowds, you know, with this park and being able to move around the park in a way that you weren't running into bottlenecks and things like that? I think that's one thing that Disney in general does pretty well. There are only a couple of spots that I can think of where it's just like, holy crap, I'm really you know, hemmed in here. One of them is like right over by like the tangled bathrooms in Fantasyland there, where everything kind of like narrows. And another one is in Africa at Animal Kingdom, but only when a Lion King show is getting out.
Yeah.
You know, so there are a couple of those kinds of things, but it sounded like there's a lot more difficulty in moving around, especially something like Epic Universe, you know, when you have crowds.
Yeah, I totally see where that's coming from. I will say that I was there on Labor Day, which is a day off from school, and the park was nearly empty, and which really surprised me considering how new it is. So there weren't a lot of people there, but if I'm remembering correctly, each one of the lands, most if not all of them, only had, I believe, one way to enter and exit that land. So I could see how, if it's super crowded, and there were some lands that were, I think the Super Mario Brothers area was probably a little bit crowded at the time. if there's only one way of entering and exiting, and there's a lot of people, then yeah, it's gonna really hinder the flow of things. I didn't have I think I recognized that issue as it was happening, but it wasn't a horrible issue for me because it wasn't so crowded in the park that day. And I did wonder, in like the grand scheme of things, what does this mean? This park's only a few months old and it's Labor Day. It's not like, I mean, yes, people aren't really traveling, but at least there's got to be a lot of local kids, right? And they have the day off of school. Why is there almost no one here? I shouldn't say no one, but it was, it wasn't nearly what I was expecting, and not nearly what Disney World was just a couple days before during like an actual work week or school week.
And power outage.
And power outage, yeah. I wonder if Universal was affected by that. I don't know if it was contained to Disney or if it spread beyond.
Now, one of the things you were just talking about, like the Super Mario Land, and I think that speaks to. Oh, looks like okay. I lost my connection for a second there. Sorry. Okay. It kind of, looking at Super Mario Land as something that I'm just like, wait, how does that factor in with Universal? And like there are a lot of properties I'm just like, oh, that's a Universal property. Like I like
they're not all Universal properties. Well, that's the thing,
and I think that's part, like How to Train Your Dragon is something that I really enjoy, but it was just like, oh, that's a Universal property. So you're absolutely right that like a lot of this is just like how does this all connect? Where
it feels very
Disney, there is that connectivity, even if you are talking about some very different kinds of IPs, whether it be Pixar or Disney Animation or Star Wars or Marvel. There seems to be much more connectivity with all of those different IPs.
And I think that connecting tissue for all the Disney IPs is that emotion. They're so good at storytelling. With Universal, I don't know if they just decided or realized long ago that they didn't have enough like viable IP of their own to like sustain a park. So I think what they do is they license a lot of it. So you have a lot of things in these parks that are not actually Universal. And I did not know this until just a few days ago. And maybe this is like old information, but apparently in the state of Florida, Disney does not have the license to do like Marvel stuff. So that's why you don't see any Marvel stuff in Disney parks. That's in Universal, which is very confusing because that is a Disney product, but you'll find like Spider-Man stuff and whatnot in Universal, not in Disney.
Interesting.
So it's very interesting how that stuff kind of works, and it does feel very disjointed. I thought the same thing. The other thing with Universal is I personally, whether it's a Universal IP or not, I don't personally have any attachment to almost any of it, really. It's like, I don't care about Fast and the Furious. I don't care about How to Train Your Dragon. I've seen some of these things, not a lot. So like the Simpsons land it's been there a long time. This is in Universal Studios Florida, if I'm not mistaken. I like the Simpsons, but I haven't seen an episode of that show in maybe 30 years. And that was like the IP that I know the best of all the IP that they have. So that was another thing that kind of brought it down for me, just my lack of knowledge. But I will say, when I was in this Super Mario Brothers land, they have this thing like this, almost like a magic band, I guess, like a wrist thing that you can use and tap it on things, and you get, I don't know what it is. It gamifies the land for you. And a lot of people were using that. And I thought, how do they even know about, like, this land has only been open. This park has been open only for a few months, but people were running around there, the people who were there, like this was old hat. Like they'd probably been there a bunch of times, just must be locals. So they were like tapping away, and they were really into this sort of thing. I did do one ride there. I'm checking my list to remember what it was called. It was the Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, which had a really cool queue, I will say. This was a very I found to be a very complicated ride, where you're sitting it basically puts you in Mario Kart, and you're wearing a visor. There's like two parts to this visor. You put on this helmet, and then when you're on the ride, you have to attach a visor to it, and it feels like 10 pounds on your head, and you're pressing buttons, and I don't even know what I'm shooting at. There were so many rules to this, and it speaks to like the overcomplication of of how they just do things at Universal from my experience, which didn't help the experience either. But some people were really into it, and I know Universal has its like Universal or die folks, and that's great. I don't plan on going back anytime soon. But yeah, my experience was just too generally negative. The overcomplication of basic things like how to get on a ride, how to get food to eat. Like you were saying, that I think Universal was, especially with Epic Universe, I think they were so focused on the epicness of it. Let's make this big and bold, the best rides, the best this, that they missed the details. And to a lot of people, it's those details that mean everything. Like when I'm at a park, I want to feel like I'm safe. I want to feel like I can have my human needs met, meaning I can eat when I'm hungry. I can go to a bathroom when I have to go to the bathroom. But there's no reason all this stuff should be super complicated. And I'm sure, there will be people listening to this thinking you just did it wrong. You didn't know X, Y, and Z. But that's kind of the point too. Like I shouldn't have to do a ton of research to figure out how to eat. It should just be pretty obvious. So, and the fact that it's not just kind of makes it that much more, I don't know, disenchanting, I guess, to me that they couldn't figure that stuff out.
All right, Dan. Well, we have gone pretty long with this, and I'm very happy and grateful for you for taking the time. But I don't want to keep you all night. So before we finish up, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that I know you had a list that you had prepared? Is there anything that's on your list that you're just like, oh, we got to make mention of this?
I think we hit all the big ones. Prosthetic limbs, check. The utilidor, check. Yes. Glasses. So there was so much stuff. I will say, the thing that I love about solo travel, and specifically for the parks, is you could do whatever you want. You can ride the same ride 100 times over if you want. You can go at your own pace. Like I said earlier, I'm the kind of person who doesn't go all the time. So I want to spend as much time as I can there. But I learned something important about myself, and that is I'm not 20 years old anymore. And I did make myself a little sick towards the end of the experience, which also didn't help matters. I think I just kind of like hurt myself in terms of just going so hard every single day. So one lesson learned from myself and for anyone else listening is just pace yourself. Just pace yourself. That's the best way to enjoy these parks, and allow flexibility. It's important to plan these things. Use We Do Travel Right or your favorite vacation planner, and they're going to do great things for you. But then even with a very well-planned trip, allow room for flexibility, because anything and everything can go wrong. And just remember, ultimately, these are first world problems. You're privileged enough to be at one of these parks. It's meant to be a happy place, and just enjoy your way through it. Smile and laugh through all the emotional turmoil.
I feel like some of that is advice that can, also be used in everyday life. Even the best laid plans, sometimes you just have to, just sit back and laugh and just realize that you can have what you think is every detail, and something's going to come along that, you're going to give your glasses to the wrong person, or forget to check your prosthetic leg, and then there you are.
And now I know what my glasses look like, Chris. That's half the battle.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dan. And of course, now we all also know what your glasses look like. So awesome. Thank you for taking the time and talking in such great detail and with such great humor about your experiences, the good, the bad, and the unusual. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. I always love talking Disney and talking with you. So thank you very much.
Well, one thing that Dan admitted was that you can't necessarily plan for every scenario, but you can certainly try. And you should let We Do Travel Right help you plan as much as you can. There are always going to be twists and turns in a trip for sure, but having a good solid plan will help make your trip go so much better. And that's why We Do Travel Right offers you the one-on-one service of an agent. But while you are getting that individualized attention, that agent is working with a team, and that team is working for you. Whether you're talking about park tickets, hotel reservations, getting those dining plans and dining reservations that you're looking for, or everything in between, even some of those things like helping you navigate the parks and figuring out how to use the apps and things like that. We Do Travel Right is here to help you. They even have things like seminars and study halls so that you can, kind of piece things together and really feel empowered to have a great trip. And I think you saw that with Dan, especially when he was going to Universal. He didn't have the work done, he didn't have the plan, and no fault of his own, but he thought that he knew. And we've all been there. There have been plenty of times where I've been to Disney, plenty of times. No problem. I learned something new every time, and We Do Travel Right can help you along the way. And the best thing is all of their services are free. You're not paying anything extra, whether you're going to Disney or Universal or on a cruise or to an all-inclusive. And why? That's because those places build the use of an agent into their pricing already. So you're paying for the agent whether you use them or not. So doesn't it just make sense to use the agent? So if you are ready to start your planning for your next vacation, go to wedotravelright.com/Mazza. That's wedotravelright.com/MAZA and get your next magical vacation started today.
Well, I can't do any more damage around this popsicle stand.
So long, partner.
See you real soon.
Well, obviously, Dan had quite the interesting trip. I think that there's a lot of great things that he's taking away from this, but I think that he's also had a few learning experiences, and we all do. Every time that we go, there's something that may come up. There may be some way that we've got to pivot, and how you deal with that really is going to have a great impact on how your trip is going to be. So, one thing that I would say to anybody is make sure that you're a little bit flexible and make sure that you're okay with laughing about it. And I know some people, this is the once in a lifetime trip and you want it to be perfect. You've got things planned and there are things that you want to do and it doesn't always work out. But really remember that, you can still make so many great memories, and so much of what makes a Disney vacation great isn't just going straight to the rides or going to this attraction or whatever. It's making sure that you're taking time to feel it, and that's just it's hard to put into words. It's hard to describe. Many have tried, and I'm going to continue trying to talk about how great and describe how great the feeling and the magic of a Disney experience can really be if you let it be. So that would be my tip. And I know that is something that Dan fully embraces. With every trip, we're going to have these things, and there are going to be times where you're going to be tired. There was one trip, I'm just going to say, I had the worst headache because I didn't learn from previous experiences, that water is so important. And I was miserable for like a day and a half. And I finally was able to rebound from that, but it definitely had an impact on our trip. And now I look back at it, I can kind of laugh about it a little bit, but at the time it's just like, learn from it. And so every time now, man, you better believe that I'm all kinds of hydrated every time we go. And that's something that we're pushing on Meghan too. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point. I know you've just been listening to Dan and I talk about Disney for an hour and a half, and I'm very, very appreciative of that. If this is your first time listening, thank you and welcome. If you've been listening since the beginning, welcome back. All the ways that you support us are so important and so appreciative. I'm so appreciative of them. And really, the best way that you can help this podcast is by letting people know, talking about it and saying, hey, I'm listening to this great podcast. Tell your family, tell your friends, especially if you've got Disney enthusiasts, if you've got sports enthusiasts, if people who are just curious about a lot of different things, because we touch on a lot. Let them know. And if you're not telling them word of mouth, please leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcatcher, because that will help bump us up in those algorithms that make us more visible. When we're more visible, well, more people have the opportunity to listen, and we'll grow this community that we're building here. And speaking of community, there are lots of ways that you can connect with us. We're on all kinds of social media. We're at the Maz's Musings Podcast on Facebook. We're on Twitter, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Maz's Musings Pod. We have a Bluesky account. It's one of those long things. So, just search for Maz's Musings Podcast. You'll find it. We also have a TikTok at Maz's Musings Podcast. Had a great interaction that I mentioned before. This is another great way that you can touch base with us. And we also have a YouTube page. So go like and subscribe there as well. You can find this information and so much more on our website, mazasmusings.wordpress.com. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter. You'll get information on past episodes that are coming up, other cool things that we've got going on, like we are preparing for the 100th episode. And we'd love for you to be part of the celebration. There's more information on the website, but basically, if you want to send a message, whether it's sending an email or recording something, either audio or video, whether it's well wishes or some other message that you'd like to get across, we'd love to hear it. So send those on, and you can find out how by going to mazasmusings.wordpress.com. So, whether you are a first-time listener or you've been listening forever, and I'm really sorry to those of you who are listening to those early episodes as we were just learning how all this works. I mean, this was all pretty much brand new to me when I started this. Now we are closing in on 100 episodes, and it's kind of wild. But along the way, there are little expenses. So if you wanted to take that support just one step further, you can always buy us a blue milk. And buying us a blue milk, which you can find the link to also on our website, is just a small way to help us with some of the small monetary costs that go into putting this podcast together. As I said, however you are supporting us, whether you're listening for the first time or buying us blue milk, everything in between, we love it all, appreciate it all, and as always, I hope you have a great weekend and a great week. For the Maz's Musings Podcast is brought to you by Hi Dad Soup. Check them out at Mickey and Minutes on Instagram.